So
Right.
this morning, I had the pleasure of chatting with Evelyn Davis, who is an emergency room nurse at the Fulton County Board of Health Nurse as well. And we're going to be chatting a little bit with what is happening in Atlanta, Georgia. Good morning, Evelyn.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for joining us this morning. I know you have to run off very soon, so we're going to jump right into it.
Okay.
All right. So you have been a nurse of over 40 years, and you are like on the ground there in Atlanta seeing what's going on. You currently have 146 cases. What is the general feeling there in Atlanta right now?
Well, actually, we have more cases than that.
Wow.
Since those numbers that you have, we have over 600 cases at this
Wow.
time.
Wow.
We have 20 deaths and over 600 cases as of March 23rd.
But
Wow.
can I jump in there because we were meant to chat with you just last week, and these were the numbers that we had last week in preparation for the interview. So you're saying that it has more than 6 times gone up, yeah?
Right, absolutely. It's spreading exponentially here in the United States.
Wow.
We haven't even begun to reach the peak. That's the scary part. The peak is nowhere in sight because the thing about it is that we're fighting something that we can't see, we can't hear, and we generally can't feel, and we don't know which direction it's coming from. It's somewhere in the community, and we don't know where in the community it is. So we at a great disadvantage right now. That's why we're really employing. Atlanta has basically gone to shutdown. We are operating. They're asking people just to go out for essentials such as groceries and medications. All the bars and restaurants have been closed. The parks are still open. They're asking you to maintain the 6 feet distance between each other. Um, and we have an issue with the young people because the young people are not paying attention. They're under the false assumption that they cannot get this virus. However, in the grand scheme of things, 1%, a little over 1% between ages of 19 and 40 are coming down with the virus. Right now, we have a 12-year-old girl in the intensive care at the Children's Hospital in Atlanta that's on the ventilator that's fighting for her life.
Wow. And as you mentioned there about the stock numbers and the way in which it has increased so rapidly, what is it like being that you are in the front line? What is it like there for the health system in Georgia?
Well, it's taxing. It's taxing the health system because, as you all know, we're running out of masks. We're running out of all the PPEs, the protective garments that we use. So, usually masks, gloves. The most important thing for us is the masks, the gloves, and the gowns. Those are the three things that are a must. People are coming into the emergency room. Everybody is in fear that they have corona. So what we actually have in the emergency room, there's a tent that's set up on the outside because we don't want you, if in case you do have corona, we don't want you coming in and infecting all the other patients that are sitting waiting to be seen. So there's a tent outside the emergency room. The nurse will check your temperature. She'll ask you a few questions. And if we deem that you're, a potential for the corona, then you will be allowed into the emergency room and taken care of.
Evelyn, I have a question for you. So Trinidad and Tobago has set up a parallel health system where persons who have COVID are not sent to the regular hospitals, but they are sent to a separate hospital. They're kept separate and apart in a separate building in a separate location. Is that happening where you are, or is it that patients are being put on the same ward with persons who have other illnesses?
No, what happens is that if patients are being, there's an ICU, there is a separate ICU. If you have COVID and you're asymptomatic and you test positive, you really need to be at home. The only persons that need to be at the hospital is someone who cannot breathe. Because what happens is that the virus causes you to have a pneumonia. Now, when you have a pneumonia, you have increased secretions inside your lungs. But the bad thing about this virus is it causes those secretions to solidify, blocking the airway, and therefore you cannot breathe. And at that time, if you have an airway, if you have a respiratory compromise, if you're not put on a ventilator ASAP, once the respiratory systems fail, cardiac arrest will follow within minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So, it's if you're positive for the virus, they're asking you to stay at home and quarantine at home. Stay away from, put you in a room. It sounds terrible, but they can put your food outside the room. You can go, you can get your food, open the door, get your food, and so forth. And they're asking family members actually to stay away from you if you're quarantined in the home.
From what you said earlier, are you finding that persons are being as vigilant as they should be at home if they, because your numbers are so much significantly higher than what we would have here. This morning when I checked, it was about 35,000. I'm not sure what it is now. But are you finding that persons who are at home are sticking to that strict quarantine rules that you're talking about there?
Yeah, generally you are. If you could, what we have in Atlanta is problems with the Generation X and some of the millennials. They feel that it's a hoax. They feel that we're overacting, and the mayor has threatened to shut down the belt lines and actually the parks. The parks are kept open, so if you want to go out, you can exercise, but they ask you to stay with, at least 6 feet apart. But as far as the homes go, generally people are complying. If you have a young person in a home and you have an adult, someone that's older, say a parent that's in the home with them, they're pretty much taking this seriously. And most people don't take it seriously until they get sick.
Yeah, and speaking of taking it seriously, what are the measures being taken to protect the frontline people, such as those in the medical field, who have to deal with patients that may or may not have the coronavirus?
Interesting. That's a very good question. Interesting, there are growing numbers of healthcare providers that are coming down with the virus. We have the N95 mask at my place. We have the N95. I work two places, at the health department and I work in the emergency room. And both places we have the N95. The thing about it is this virus is not only if you sneeze or you cough, the droplets, and you inhale the droplets, it can live on surfaces for up to 3-4 days. It can hang in the air. So in other words, if somebody sneezes or coughs and they have the virus and you walk by where they sneeze, it hangs in the air for up to 3-4 hours. So, we're trying to be as vigilant. Right now, for us, we have an N95 mask. Our name is on that mask, and we're supposed to have that mask for at least a week. So most of us guard our N95s with our lives, because the supplies are low. They are dwindling. And, we have gotten crazy responses from the President of the United States that we can wash our gloves with hand sanitizers and reuse your gloves. Now, we know as nurses and professionals and doctors, that's not going to fly. That's not going to fly.
Right.
So I expect to see more nurses, more doctors being infected. So far, no one in my crew has been infected. Thankfully. And, right now we have what we need, but we have enough to last us, say, till the middle of April.
Wow, and that is very close. That's no time at all.
And that's very close. And then after that, the supplies are supposed to be getting to the hospitals and the healthcare facilities across the United States, but it's a dire situation, and there are nurses and doctors that are dying.
Unfortunately, and just
Yes.
before we close off, are there enough beds available right now, or are the hospitals under a lot of strain and they do have an overflow?
Yeah, there aren't enough beds in general. In general speaking, there aren't enough beds. We in my hospital we have several ICUs, and so they've taken we have a contract with the prison the prison system, and so prisoners, the federal prisoners, come to our hospitals and we take care of them. Well, what they did was took one side of a medical and surgical unit and put those prisoners there, and then took the unit that the prisoners were in, which holds 30 beds, and that would be, for patients who need to be on a ventilator. So ventilator beds are running short.
Yeah.
And
That's the issue.
And just before we go, considering all the issues surrounding this, for those errant Gen X and millennials who are still not taking it seriously enough, what would be the one message you would tell them this morning?
Well, I would tell them that this virus does not have age discrimination. It needs to be taken seriously. I think when this virus, the CDC and the United States and countries across the world, this caught us totally unprepared. The CDC was totally unprepared because it's nothing that they've ever seen before. We all know as healthcare professionals when viruses mutate, when they reproduce, they mutate. That's why we cannot have a cure for the common cold, because they mutate so often. When they reproduce, we don't know what we're going to get. So I would say to these young folks, initially when the virus came out, there was not enough known about it. We did not know how it was operating. It was affecting mostly the elderly, people that have underlying medical issues. But as they continue to study the virus, every single day the CDC updates all of us on what they found out about this virus. So initially it was affecting the elderly people 55 and above. Now we find out it can affect all of us, including young children.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and what they've done in the United States, they have employed the help of the younger Kardashian sisters, a lot of the Generation X musicians that the kids will pay attention to and respect what they're saying. And what the governments have done was to contact those people and ask them, could they please, get in, speak to especially the ones that are on Instagram.
Yeah.
Right.
I know Kylie Kardashian, she has an Instagram post out where she's asking young people to stay in, avoid the crowds, and just this is a serious matter that is affecting everybody. I can't tell you yet if it's being effective yet, because the jury is still out on that. But I know in Atlanta, pretty much every place that a young person can congregate has been shut down.
Yeah.
So I know the mayor is doing her best, and the CDC is doing their best to put out, the announcements that this is something that needs to be taken seriously.
And with that, Evelyn, I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning and encourage you and your team and all the work that you've been doing as we all struggle through this pandemic. I want to thank you again for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. Thank you. Thank you so much.